I am stoked to have you on here, Kimberly, and we're gonna call you Kimber from here on. So,
Love it.
um, I like Kimber so much better. But I am super stoked to have you on the podcast for a number of reasons.
Mhm.
One that we've known each other on social media for a long time, but
Yeah,
then have since met at ice festivals. You've come to the Wyoming Ice Festival a couple of times. I'm still bummed to
mhm,
haven't. We really wanted to get this in person because I would have been. I'm so much more stoked to have conversations with people in person,
right,
but I also want to have these conversations, and it might take a long time before we're able to do them in person. So,
totally.
but what I'm really excited about you is you're somebody that gets after it in the mountains and seems to always be doing something, but you also have a full time job,
Yeah,
which is, I think, really exciting because that's so much harder to accomplish. And so, can you kind of just give us a little bio of yourself?
yeah. So I would describe my careers as full-time educator or full-time kitty corraler. I teach kindergarten, so the babies. It's a little bit of like herding cats, but I run a tight ship. And it's almost the end of the year now, so they're far into reading and doing math equations. It's pretty fun. But I also consider myself, part-time alpinist, and I will use pretty much any and every school break, weekend to go climb ice right now. It's ice season. I really, really love climbing. So I'm spending a lot of time either traveling. We have had a couple of cold snaps in Washington. We call the ice out here unicorn ice. But I got on some routes. I got to lead a Hubba Hubba. It's this big WI3 route in Leavenworth, Washington. So it came in, it was just hero ice. And so, I got to lead it for, some buddies that are newer to ice, and it was just fun. So it's kind of what I do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. So when you decided you were going to be a teacher, were you already kind of climbing quite a bit at that point in time?
No, I grew up in a household that didn't do a lot of climbing or hiking. We were hunting and fishing. So, I mean, all the pictures of myself as a little kid, it's holding up a little fish. And that I did and still do to this day, but it wasn't until I was 20, 28, 29 that I got into
Wow.
climbing. Yeah, out here we have an
Okay.
organization called the Mountaineers, kind of, the
Hmm.
state's um, you know, uh, club for climbing. So I took the alpine course for the basic one, and then intermediate. That was almost like a decade ago, and now we'll lead climbs for them and instruct and volunteer for the organization because it's really fun to see people learning and loving it. I'll instruct for a lot of the ice course kind of lectures and bringing every year kind of a crew out to Bozeman, Montana, so they can get out on some waterfall ice.
Yeah.
But kind of I started later in life, and I loved hunting and getting out into the woods, for that pursuit. But now, getting out in the woods looks a lot like going after peaks, going after frozen waterfalls.
Yeah. That's cool. I mean, that was pretty much my childhood as well, was hunting and fishing with my dad. Um, that was, I felt like, every weekend. Now that I'm older, I'm like, no, there were seasons, so we probably weren't hunting every weekend. But it sure seemed that way. And yeah, I'm curious. So for you, was that was kind of like, I imagine that was your dad's passion.
Oh yeah, his passion, since he was a little kid, is anything to do with fishing, either ocean fishing, living out here in Washington, where close to the ocean, and river fishing, um, elk, blacktail. That was like my world. Turkey hunting, raising cows, living on a farm, kind of doing all of that. And it really, gave me passion for, you know, res- respecting just the beauty of, Washington animals. And I just loved it. But recreating outside of that, was new to me in my later 20s, early 30s. And so it's really cool to, kind of look back and go, oh my gosh, the groundwork for, loving getting up early in the morning and an alpine start was, so I could get a donut at this donut shop with my dad at 3 a.m. and get on the water. So, we could fill um, our little fishing license up before 7 a.m.
Yeah.
So,
Nice. So you mentioned something about did you grow up on kind of a little farm of some sort or outside the
yeah.
city or
Yeah, we lived, this area, Graham, Washington, so it's kind of on your way to, Mount Rainier, if you were coming from, Seattle through Tacoma. So, 5 acres they bought way back in the early '90s. Amazingly, I think, $80,000 got them 5 acres, which, blows my mind now. But yeah, they just right? Yeah. And, huge orchard and garden and, cows. And so that kind of like outside, playing outside, street hockey with the neighbor boys. I was kind of the only girl in the neighborhood. And so it was just, gardening and chasing the cows with, the four wheeler and then, playing street hockey with the boys. Um, yeah, that was childhood.
a little bit of a tomboy maybe then?
There are definitely elements there for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it. And were you only child? Do you have siblings?
I have a brother who's 17 months younger than I,
Okay.
and he now, lives out in Idaho, graphic designer, has 2 kids of his own. So I'm
Okay.
Auntie Kimmy, who, does crazy things. And so, I'll just get the text, where are you at now? So. um,
Nice.
mm.
Nice. So, what does your dad think about climbing and what you're doing now?
He has always been, someone who has never doubted once, my capabilities. And obviously, my journey into climbing or just in life, um, is bookmarked by being born with one hand. And it was very interesting having, 2 parents that, were really supportive and loving. But my dad definitely had the mentality of, doesn't matter, go be the best. And my mom had a little bit more of, um, a gentle parenting role, like, are you sure? Will you be okay? Are you nervous? And so
Mm.
I got to see kind of both perspectives. But my dad, got me into sports young. He was huge into athletics growing up. And so, it's the basketball and the volleyball and fast pitch. And I really clung to the fast pitch, pitching. And I had a coach that would come up from Texas every 2 weeks. This amazing Japanese man, and it's kind of like that next Karate Kid. He would have me, wax on, wax off, and it was just I knew I can do it. I can be the best. I can, work hard. And I think that's really something my dad laid the foundation of, in me at a young age is, having that confidence and having that kind of grit and perseverance, regardless of, how I was born or, what I was missing to make it harder.
Yeah. Do you want to kind of, since you opened the door to that, do you want to kind of tell people about your one hand?
Yeah. So terminal transverse defect is apparently the medical name for it. One in, many, many babies, and either 90 or something like that, 90,000. And, my mom and dad, they were told they weren't going to have kids. She had a brain tumor and Cushing's disease. And so, as they were engaged in just kind of getting my mom through, this brain tumor, had the honeymoon, went, we'll just go to Disneyland, whatever. And it's Magic Kingdom for a whole different reason to me personally, because 9 months later, I graced the earth with my presence, But in addition, they were like, whoa, our daughter has, you know, missing fingers. They did not finish growing. And so that is something that, I've known from the beginning. So, it wasn't like a climbing accident where I lost it, but modifications and adaptations to, athletic gear, my mitt, that I had to pitch with that, was sewn tighter because my, wrist was a little smaller and, I don't have the ability to, close it like this. So those things were just part of life. And it's continued on, and where it's taken me into climbing is um, pretty sweet.
Yeah, I mean, I have to imagine your dad just being like, adapt. Like, it's not that you can't do it, just figure out how to adapt to it, how to play a big role in you both pursuing sports as a kid and I'm sure other things, but then also going into climbing. Like that would, I have to imagine that would change your mindset pretty heavily.
Yeah, it was this, you just do it. You just figure out a
Yeah.
way. And so, when I joined the Mountaineers, it was pretty ironic because I go in not having a deficit mindset over myself, and my dad just never even gave me the opportunity to sit in
Mm.
that. And I show up kind of at the first meeting, ready to get the, Freedom of the Hills book and the program for, the season of learning what is alpine climbing. I was like, oh, I want to go up Rainier. Cool. This place will get me ready for that. But didn't really understand what I was getting into. And the guy teaching the class, Scott Sichel, this, amazing guy out in Washington that does, a lot for the mountaineering community. He's kind of leading the course, and he pulled me aside. He's like, hey, committee's unsure of, your potential, safety hazards because you have one hand. They don't know, should we let you in or not? And, he, Army vet, had shrapnel injuries to his legs and whatnot. So had seen people, adapt because of injuries, coming from, um, the military. And he's like, you don't have an excuse. You're going to show us how you do it, and you're going to do it safely. Done deal. So it was really cool to have someone, in this space that I was entering into, um, say, hey, there are concerns. And I don't give two craps about them because you're going to make it happen.
Yep.
And I really appreciate that because honestly, that was, probably the same way I was raised in my, dad's opinion. But I hadn't even thought about like, oh, I guess there is this thing called belaying and rappelling, and those are generally two-handed things that you will be
Yeah.
doing, and so
Interesting. And then, so what, but what opened the door to you wanting to climb? Like, what was it? Was it somebody introduced you to it or?
yeah, I had a close girlfriend. We got on the phone one random Tuesday night in November because we both had our relationships with those current boyfriends end. They were kind of in a season of life where they maybe just weren't the best. And, I look back in hindsight, I'm like, thank goodness the best thing they did for us was to cut ties and be like, I'm not good enough for you. I need to go take care of myself. And so in our brokenheartedness of like, but we can fix them. We were like, you know what? Let's go. She's like, let's go take this course. Let's join the Mountaineers. Do you want to do that? Like, screw broken hearts. Let's do that. And that's honestly why I climb now.
Really? So
Yeah,
literally no climbing background at that point. No friends that had it's like, hey, come climbing. It was like basically, let's go do this to get over these dudes.
yeah, yeah. We both, were
That's awesome.
heartbroken and single, and we're like, let's go climb. So I really we owe it to those men. I don't know where they are in life right now, but God bless
Thank
them.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is what I
Thanks
say.
for opening a much bigger door for me in my
Yeah,
life. Oh my gosh, that is so good. And
yeah.
so through that, and I'm not super familiar with the club, I kind of know it, but through that course, I guess that you took, then that just opened the door to being more part of the club and doing other things.
Yeah, yeah. And with my teaching schedule and summers off, I really got to, throw myself into this, realm of, mountaineering and, the alpine world. And I think the very, first week of summer, end of June or beginning of July, in a 9 day span, I was able to climb Mount Olympus, the Tooth, which, multi-pitch rock climb out here, and then Mount Rainier, all in the span of 9 days. And felt great. Was like, whoa, this is not easy, but this is something that I love. I love the, pain of waking up early. I love the sufferfest of just the slog and working with people and getting to see these incredible views. And I'm used to, sunrise on the water with my dad and my fishing pole. And this was like sunrise on a mountain with my ice axe and people I had just met. And so,
Yeah.
incredible. And it really took my heart. And, through those next couple of years of, learning everything from, square one, it just shifts your perspective of, nature and your physical strength and just your confidence as a human, and as a female, I was just like, this is incredible. This is, empowering, but not just like female empowerment, but just like the fact that I can use my body in this form and push myself, up these mountains. It just caught me. I caught that passion
Huh.
pretty soon
And
after, that one summer.
yeah. And when was that then? How many years ago was that?
2016,
Okay.
2016, 17. Yeah. So we're almost at a decade of
Yeah.
doing this little climbing thing. So in it's so funny in the large scheme of it, I'm like, oh man, it's still so new and so fresh. And then I just look back at where I was and where I've come and all the opportunities to climb, honestly around the country and the world. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. What was the hardest thing to adapt to, like at first?
Yeah. Well, when it comes to, all those, self rescue or, crevasse rescue, whether it's rock or glacier, realizing, how, I can use different knots. Like none of the knots were hard, none of the systems were hard. I really felt confident on belaying and rappelling. I have a brake strand hand, like this is my hand, and everything else you kind of, finagle and do. Like the way I tie my shoe is only slightly different than the way someone with two hands ties their shoe. So that wasn't really a big issue in the way that maybe you would have assumed it was. She has one hand, so how can she even, coil a rope, but pretty easily. And so
Yeah.
the thing that was really like a wall of like you shall not pass without, some really creativity, was the ice climbing portion, or alpine ice is what they call the intermediate, kind of module at the very end. So once I was like, I love this. I don't just want to follow. I want to lead glacier teams. I want to lead on rock. Now there was this ice climbing thing, and I was like,
Huh.
"Ooh, that's definitely a two-handed sport." Um, I don't know where I enter in.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
belaying's wasn't really much of an issue.
No, you really just, the way someone, will grab the rope and pull it down, and kind of take out the slack, with their, brake strand from the, bottom of the device. Like I can just, pull down with my, stump, for lack of a better term, and just my movements, maybe look different, or my grasp looks different. If I'm rappelling and I have to take off, my personal off the anchor, it's kind of wrapped on this hand, and I always have, the hollow block, the third hand, on, and being able to, take it off on my harness, switch back to the brake strand, to my main, hand. Little movements like that, you're like, okay, it's nearly the same. It's not that big of a modification. The safety, my level of safety and commitment to safety is still high. It really was just like, okay, we're going into, alpine ice. I want to climb North Ridge of Baker. I want to climb, the Couts Route or Rainier. I want to climb waterfall ice. Like that looks fascinating, but I don't know if that's going to be possible. That is really where I think, kind of for the first time in my life, I thought, ooh, okay, like maybe that's where my wall is. That's where, the end game, like I can't do that.
Huh. And it's funny because I would think the so rock climbing has. I mean, I guess you just in the same way. I guess you just figure out how to use holds differently and position your body differently because you're still able to use it, right,
Yeah,
as balancing or smearing or whatever it might be. And
totally.
then
Yeah,
yeah,
it's interesting. I'll tape my hand up because obviously, there's not all of your hand is calloused, and so it's gonna scrape across granite. And I have left,
yeah,
many, at first, bloody marks on things, realizing like, oh, my skin is so supple. But I tape it up, and honestly, I like to make the joke, if you ever climb with hexes, those cowbells, like it's like a hex 9 shape. So I'm like, oh, it's my flesh 9. I can just, pop it in and walk it off and continue climbing. And, so climbing on lead is, not an issue. And if it's, a crack that, is maybe like a finger crack and super thin, I've learned to, I just have to aid sometimes, put in a totem and, put my hand kind of right in there on that extra sling, if I can't get in. And so, there's a little bit of modification, a little bit of aiding, but I'm like, too many people do that too. I'm one of the normies in that sense.
Oh my gosh. So you then, at what point did you have the um adaptive, at what point did you get a tool that was adaptive for you?
Yeah, well, the same guy who was like, no excuses. You're going to be a part of this course. I believe in you. He, at that point in time, I was like, oh, okay, I guess this is where I stop. And he's like, no, check out this picture. And it was a grainy picture of maybe over a decade old at that point, of Maureen Beck. She's an adaptive athlete. She climbs for the North Face, and she, back in the day, used a prosthetic ice tool. And it was just a picture of her climbing, and I could, back of her head, all I saw was a visual of what was possible. And I was like, oh my goodness, something like that has existed. That's what I need. There we go. One picture, and I was like, done deal. Next steps. And I threw out kind of a Hail Mary on social media and through friends and everyone of like, I need a prosthetic. When I was, 5, maybe, I remember my parents taking me to this like prosthetic office, and this was early 90s, and it was a bunch of us in one room, like kids of different ages. We all had missing limbs, or, just different looking limbs. And, they talked about all the different technologies they were working on and this and that. And we would, kind of practice with various prosthetics or things, and nothing worked for me. I played the piano better without it. I tied my shoes better without something. I just didn't like it. It just made me feel like limited,
Yeah.
prosthetic wise. Like, I don't want any of these. And so my parents were like, dude,
Mm.
you just like threw that stuff to the side. And I was like, nope, I don't need anything. And now, here I am, early 30s, going like, oh, okay, I'm going back into the prosthetic world that I was so anti as a child. Like, no, I don't need it. I'm not that disabled. And now I'm like, well, no, I definitely need it. And amazingly, a doctor was neighbors to my aunt, a prosthetic doctor. And he was like, oh, like, she needs a prosthetic, an upper limb. Okay, that's interesting. I've done it for a lot of athletes. I want to make one for her. And, insurance doesn't
Not going to
fully,
cover the ice climb. Yeah.
no, they don't really buy into the, sharp things, vertical ice, lots of area exposure, the that doesn't seem favorable to, our accountants. So we're not going to cover that. And
Yeah.
he was like, I'm going to do it pro bono. Like, I want to, number one, find out what ice climbing is, teach me what ice climbing is, and then I want to do something. So I went over to his house, pulled up a video of Will Gadd, was like, here's a nice man named Will, and he's going to climb some ice. And we, looked at the mechanics and the swings and everything. And he's like, hey, my number one goal is to make sure you don't fall out of the prosthetic, but I think it's
Mm.
possible. I think it's possible. And that was the start of, what the next 7 years would look like climbing ice. Um, Man,
Interesting. And so, do you and Mo have, is it basically a similar, um, or your stump?
no, we don't. She was
Okay.
born that way as well, but hers kind of ends right after
Oh,
the
that's
elbow
right.
and
Yep.
tapers, right? And so
Okay.
there's actually, we just have,
Totally different prosthetic.
fascinating, yeah, in the upper limb different world, you know,
Yeah.
you can think, oh, it's kind of the same, and then it ends up not being at all. And so she really didn't like her prosthetic, as we became friends and got to know each other, because it was hard to keep her arm warm. And uh, she now, works with Petzl, and they made kind of a bigger trigger finger on that, and she's able to rest her, stump on it, and climbs that way. I've used it once, and I just was like, I have too much arm. Like, I am so scared. I'm gonna just like
Yeah.
knock this off. And but I just realized, with the different features, like what I use just works so smoothly. I
Yeah.
did bring it for a show and tell here.
Oh, yes. I wanna see it. And because
Yeah.
you've also got good wrist mobility, right? I
Yeah.
mean, your wrist
Yeah.
is totally yeah.
And this is what I'll mantle, or, I'll crimp when I'm rock
Yep.
climbing, on it. At my old gym, I had the pull up record, 31 in a row, no kipping, because your wrist just, can really hold on. And I would just pull up, like this. And
Wait, wait, wait,
yes,
wait, wait, wait. How many pull-ups?
31 in a row.
31 in a row pull-ups.
Yes. Yes.
That's
There's a
that
little video
is
of
that a
it, but
school record?
you know what? At this place that was called Peak Performance, that was the record. We wrote it on the wall. That was a good, 6 years ago. So ask me now, and I need some time to retrain. But it's pretty cool what your wrist can do, and I'm just like, you guys can do pull-ups with wrists. Like it's wild how strong it is. So yeah, with
Yeah, but you
rock,
still like I don't like it. I mean, a normal like not many people can do 30 pull-ups in general.
yeah, it's,
So I'm sorry. I'm just like I'm blown away. That's a lot of pull-ups.
yeah, yeah.
Male or female, it really doesn't matter. That's a lot of
Very
pull-ups.
true.
So
Yes, true.
how many can
I
you
was
do
blessed
today?
by my dad's genetics. He's big shouldered, broad shouldered, big calf
Yeah.
man. So, my calves never burn on ice because they are just made um, from good material, good genetics. For right
That's good
now,
to
how
know.
many can I do? I mean, I'll let you know. I'll text you
Yeah,
the
you
number.
have to let me know. I want to see video of
Yeah.
how many pull-ups is Kimber gonna get done. You think
Yeah.
you're gonna be in the 20s?
Hopefully. I mean, I'm 38
Okay.
now, and that was, I think around 30. So 8 years heading towards your 40s, man, that can change things. I don't know, not maybe not for you, but so we'll see. I'll let you know.
I mean, I can definitely yeah, I could definitely do 30 pull-ups.
Yeah,
I don't know what my max has been though. It's probably in the 40s or something. But
I know.
uh yeah, I'm sure I wouldn't be my best thing to just scoot it off the couch. But I normally do I mean, a normal set for me is 20
Yeah,
and I'll do that, but yeah, I'm still yeah, that's I want to see how many pull-ups you can do.
yeah, deal.
And good to know because Wyman Ice Festival we're going to do a pull-up contest thing
Oh,
and good to know that you're going to be kind of the shoe in to maybe win there. So,
I'll come. I'll
yeah.
do it. I'll put in some
You're going to have a
training.
target on your back. Everybody's going to start training now.
Yeah, well, then I'm
Yeah.
gonna ask people like, okay, now you have to do it with your wrist and one hand. So
Yeah,
I'll make
yeah,
them level the playing field.
that changes things quite dramatically.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So, all right. So how does your hand lock into that prosthetic?
Yeah, good question. So, step one is a liner. So, a lot of times we're used to prosthetics that are lower limb, and you see people kind of pull on a liner on their thigh stump, wherever it is, and that has a single kind of like screw that sticks out. And so, same idea, I have this silicone liner, and, they have you roll it onto your appendage just like that. So, here is my liner. Um, it works as a nice, almost extra finger because when I'm, swinging leads, I'm at the anchor, I pop off my ice tool, put on my carry tool, or it's right there in the ice. And I'm actually, tying the anchor, or if I have to take out a knot, it's an extra finger that has actually been, helpful. Also when I'm really mad at my partner and they're just, being lame, it's, kind of
Got to
uh,
get their attention.
the metal
Yeah.
bird, if you will. So that's my liner, right? And with my prosthetic, it's a carbon fiber Prosthetic. There's a titanium kind of connector, and then it's the ice tool. And we kind of did some prototypes. We had an old Gravel ice tool that I just randomly bought off Craigslist because I was like, I don't know how many of these ice tools I'm going to be chopping up and ruining. And thankfully, Petzl had given me a pro deal. I had a buddy that worked for them, and they're like, hey, we'll help you afford, to buy a few and chop up a few. We'll see how it works. But if you just take the handle, take the tape off, the handle's just screwed on to kind of the
Yeah.
shaft. We pulled it out, popped it in the prosthetic, and then with both tools in my hand, as I held it out, just even. So literally it just needed the handle to come off, and we didn't have to do any more slicing and dicing,
Nice.
which was amazing for, my teacher salary, and the speed of everything. So this is what the carbon fiber portion looks like. You see the, titanium kind of connector. And the crazy thing is there's these Allen wrench holes. So I could pop this off and get, a whole different piece attachment for a different tool. I'd
Yep.
love, a fly fishing rod on it. I just think, why not? Um,
Put a
but
Hydra on
at
there, something like that.
Right? Yeah, yeah. But also you can change the angle of it, by some loosening and tightening. So I could change it this way, I could change it this
Mm.
way. Um, but thus far, I haven't really needed to. So you'll see there's, I don't know if the light shines well on that, but
Kind of
there's
see in there. Yep.
kind of like a locking mechanism. So you'll hear it. On this portion, we realized my wrist obviously is a lot skinnier than my palm. And so he had to kind of cut out a piece of the carbon fiber and then just kind of rivet it on. So it
Oh.
almost acts like a secondary just grip.
Yep.
So I just can't even like slide down a bit. So I just pop in. There's a nice little locking sound. I'll lock that in, and then I'm solid. And it's rated for 750 pounds to hang off of it before this locking mechanism is compromised.
Got it.
And so my swing obviously is not going to be that kind of flick, but
Yeah,
I'm
'cause
able
you're not get
to.
you lose the ability to flick your wrists with
Right.
the carbon fiber piece, okay?
Yeah, for
So it's
sure.
more on
So
the elbow,
we do a
shoulder.
little bit more elbow, shoulder, and how I train, realizing like a lot of core, a lot of shoulder, kind of a lot of back, because I, want it to be something where, I'm not getting injured or just strained after a season of ice. I'm really able to, do what I can with that motion. And so it actually works really great, and it sinks in. And, the very first season that I, climbed out in Uray at the ice park was at a festival for Paradox Sports, and they host um, climbing on rock, ice for people with adaptive needs, whether it's,
Yep.
you know, blindness or one leg prosthetics, you name it. They're really a supportive organization that gets anyone on ice. And I remember Andres Marin was there watching me climb, and he was like, oh, the way that your tool comes down on the ice, let's, sharpen your point this, certain way. And, it's just been really cool to, climb around professionals, and then they're seeing something for the first time, a prosthetic ice tool, but they're getting to add their professional opinion based on experience of, okay, like the way you're swinging and coming down on the ice has to be tweaked just like this. And then
Yeah.
a safer swing, a less ice
Yep.
displacement, things like that. So, I mean, it's in, works, holds, even if I'm pulling, I can sense, on anything that's, WA5, WA6, there is that gravitational pull, but with the silicone on my arm, it kind of suctions to my arm, if
Hmm.
that makes sense. And you're really kind of climbing with your feet. Your tools are just keeping you attached sometimes. So I'm not really pulling up on this, like maybe, I'm pulling on my left one sometimes a little bit more. But really I just, focus on really good feet. And I'm able to, do it without any strain. And should I want to take it off, when it's time to take it off, it's a simple, push of the button and it
Yeah.
releases, and there you go.
That's very cool. All
Yeah.
right, here's my list of questions. So, if you were to fall and that tool was good, you would literally the suction on that arm is so good that you would just hang?
Yeah, and I have experienced that in little ways, um, a few times, where, I'm gonna make a big step over a bulge, my feet give out, but, man, that tool is just, like, there, and so I'm like, "Ooh," get your
Yep.
feet back up. I've done some dry tooling at a crag on top rope and, feet gave out, lost the other tool, but this tool was hanging there and, just the way that this climb was, I was just kind of space under me and my partner just let me hang there and I was like, I'm not going anywhere. I can't let go of this. You got to pull me up or like I do something. He's just kind of watching the laugh and he's like, that's fascinating. Like you'll just hang there all day if I let you. And I'm like,
Uh,
yeah.
sorta. I mean, my shoulder's gonna start really burning, and yeah, because I imagine even just hanging there, there's still muscles that are happening, so it's still gonna be
Yeah, you'll feel that,
yeah,
once in a while, but, if whether on lead or, if I have really good footing on lead or, right after I've placed a screw and I'm, feeling nice and safe, sometimes, I'll release it and just kind of put my arm down, kinda, someone shakes their,
yeah,
hand out. It's kinda like that. I just have to take the whole tool. But for the most part, I really don't notice it. When you're climbing, maybe it's a long pitch, and I've linked two up on lead before, and um, you're so focused and your adrenaline's going. I don't feel a strain on my arm, and then it's like the silver lining. I'm here. I got a good placement, and I'm just placing that screw, and I can just take my sweet time. There's no screaming barfies. There's no pumping out, so, partners will be like, "That's not fair," and I'm like, "Just let me have it. Just let me have something," some kind
I
of
mean, it's
sweet spot
I
with
would
this.
imagine it all equals out in the end, like, climbing with it, you're throwing that tool totally different, you don't have the feeling in your hand of how good that like, there's so many other
Right.
things that I'm sure it just freaking evens out.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, yeah, I might be jealous. You only have to worry about one hand getting cold. I'll be jealous about that. But there's a whole bunch of other things that you have to figure out that
yeah,
most people aren't going to have to figure out, especially
yeah.
when it comes to
So
like mixed climbing and matching. You don't get to match.
I don't get to match, and so I
No.
kind of will pay attention to my route, and knowing, where am I gonna place screws? Because obviously, I'm not placing a screw with my right hand. I have been
Yep.
able to on different routes, if the ice is, up in front of me, but it also starts building over here. I've done it where, I'm in and I'm putting a screw right here. There's ice right here because I'm going that way, and hey, that's a great place for
Yeah.
protection. And so, there's different things, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll just start, going this way versus, getting to do it, the
Yeah.
traditional way. Um, and there's gonna be times where, hey, my growth in leading and my the levels of grades of ice, it may be a different process than someone else like with two hands, but like in my opinion comparison is the thief of joy, and it's just been so great to be in a community where people are stoked to climb with me and they want to learn about it, and I'm just so provoked by people around me and the women climbing and the men, where I just like my journey's my own, and man, this
Yeah.
is working. Like I'm leading on ice and swinging leads and getting to be that equal partner,
Yep.
not just always following or always on top rope. And then I love, getting to, get those couple few friends that are at those rope guns, and they'll be like, I'll shoot up this, M5 and you'll follow and it'll be great. And so it's really fun to, yeah, just kind of see how far this prosthetic can
Yeah.
go, how good I can get in my skills, and there'll be times where, hey, like I, I can't, you know, m- maybe lead over this section. It's just really too spicy. But following it gives me a little higher safety margin, to where, hey, if I'm falling, like I'm gonna fall, but I'm not gonna get hurt. if it's overhanging, or um, I'm more um, apt to, take a risky move because, I know, like, okay, I'm not on lead per se.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How, how I mean, it seems like you've progressed very quickly given that you're not living in Colorado or Wyoming where Montana where there's ice climbing right at your back door. It seems like you've been able to progress pretty quickly with that.
Yeah, it's been really enjoyable. And again, I'm going out to, Bozeman about 5 times every season, trying a big trip every year, whether it's, to Canada or, Cody, like the Ice Fest in Cody has really been, maybe I'm helping out, this past year, helping instruct at, an intro to ice course. But Cody is where I'm like, "Ooh, this is where, I'm gonna take a course for myself, or, I'm gonna go out with some friends, during the Ice Fest there and really push my progression and, get some very tailored, specific, guidance with whoever my partner is or whoever, is
Yeah.
teaching that clinic." And so, I've just kind of been intentional and consistent. And I think, those two aspects, even if I'm not a guide or I'm not, a full time, professional athlete, when it comes to ice, like, it's just the consistency and that dedication is, really helping kind of grow my skills
Yeah.
season after season.
Well, that's cool. I mean, that's kind of the idea strategy behind the Wyoming Ice Festival to be the festival that people want to go to really fine tune techniques.
Yeah.
Um, Before we get further into that, because I want to circle back to something which is your job.
Yeah.
You're a kindergarten teacher. Um, if anybody's listening doesn't follow you, they should. If not for the climbing, for your what do you call it? It's like the kindergarten quote of the day, right?
Kindergarten quote of the day, you got it.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
It cracks me up, like, this is really for, my mom. I know, she loves to kinda, stalk my social media, and I just started posting them, years ago for, her and just kinda being funny, and now I'll get messages where people are like, "I came for the mountains, but I stayed for the kindergarten quote." Um
totally, I understand it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and it's great, I mean, I make sure they're, the ones that I can say, are PG, and, there are no names. There's some that are not, that, are only
yeah.
for, my teaching group text messages. But it's just the other day it was so funny. I have a amazing mom that comes in and volunteers, and she was like, "Well, how was your, trip for, midwinter break in Chamonix? It looked amazing. I found you on the gram. And also, I heard that kindergarten quote, and that I think was my son. We do have a katana. I'm not gonna let him bring it to school, but I loved hearing that, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah." He did say if
Oh my
we had a
goodness.
zombie attack during our Valentine party, he would protect us with a katana, and he would bring it to school on the regular if I needed. And so, thank you for making sure that doesn't end up in his backpack. So, yeah, there's
Oh my word.
the world of kindergarten, from the mouths of babes. They're so funny, and they don't even know it.
I mean, kids are pretty. I did this presentation on ice climbing. The teacher asked me to come do it for these kids that were in a. I can't remember the actual, it was some kind of special group, but they were middle schoolers, so they weren't that young. And there was this one kid in the back. It was like, "Well, have you ever run into a grizzly?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, I have." And he goes, "Did you shoot it?" And I was like, "Well, no, you can't. You can't." What kind of gun did you carry? And like the whole class started getting. And I was like, I was so uncomfortable. I was like, "Am I? I know I'm in Wyoming, but should we be talking about guns?" Like, And then the teacher was like, "No, you can't just shoot." Well, no, Then I was just like, the ice climbing topic was like, I was like, how do I get this classroom back? And the
Oh, yeah.
kids just went on this journey, and I was just like, oh my god, I don't know, I'm never going to be asked to come back here again.
They're
But
professional derailers. Yeah,
yes, I was taken by surprise. Yeah, I'm not. I
totally.
haven't been asked to come back, but so I'm curious. would you recommend as a climber? Like, I mean, is being a teacher kind of a good job
It
other than the lack of pay? Uh,
right. If you can be really good at balancing your checkbook, you can do it. But I honestly, you know, teaching is stressful, much like, any kind of job.
yeah,
But the breaks really, that's where I get to go decompress. For example, last Friday, really hard day in the classroom, new student, getting used to that. There's a lot that it's an emotional and physical and mental toll. And so left Friday going like, oh my gosh, like I need to just disassociate. But I had my bags packed. I drove straight to the airport because I had a weekend of ice climbing with a partner in Highlight Canyon. And that weekend of, being on ice just took me away from the stress of teaching. And I came back on Monday just so like restart.
ready to
And
go.
that I think is what has really helped me, stay in education. It does get harder every 5 years. I'm like, wow, this is way harder than it was 5 years ago. And and I just love the fact that, I can have those times, those extended breaks to go on longer trips. My district has a midwinter break, not just a spring break. And so, yeah, we're an extra week in June. But as a girly who loves her winter sports, that week off in February is great. I just go find the ice or, I go find where the snow's good and ski. And so I feel like that that balance, it's work play balance, is possible as a teacher. I've made it, a decade of alpinism and teaching full time, and I've thought
Yeah,
about, do I want to go full time climbing and enter that world? I got to kind of test the waters in the North Faces athlete development program, with that 2 year experience, and I love it, and I'm getting more into public speaking and traveling for public speaking events, and it's enticing, writing a book or things like that, writing a children's book, but then I just remember, I have a pension. Uh,
oh yeah,
oh yeah. And so, I'm really realizing like with this teaching schedule, and I've done it for 15 years, I'm national board certified educator. And so I'm able, I think, with ease to get to do all three: public speaking and climbing, and teaching. And it hasn't really taken a toll. I
yep,
chose not to have my own children either by choice or just um couldn't re- picky with partners, and wanting to just be so patient and wait, and um so I didn't have kids at home. I could kind of 3:45 is when I was off the clock, and so I know that gives a lot of, mental and physical energy back into someone's life. So yeah, it's just been kind of a great situation. A lot of my climbing friends are either way in, tech type stuff, and they can take any random day off, or they're firefighters or they're nurses. And,
yeah,
so teaching is, another one of those careers where you can, go all out when it comes
yeah.
to, mountaineering, climbing.
It's way more impressive to balance the climbing career with the actual work career,
Yeah.
and being somebody that did that, and then
Mhm.
at age, what was that? Was been let's see, 40, 46 is when I retired from my corporate gig.
Uh,
Um, you know, it's so much better, and like, oh, I think the other piece of it is like you do lose the reason you get out a little bit for like I do miss that like the de-stressor, like I go out and I don't think about it and then I'm like recharged and ready to go to work.
mhm.
And I do miss a little bit about the focus and strategizing that work kind of had for me and like getting my mind right after a really good weekend of climbing. I miss
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Um, what I most important about having a job for as long as I did is the financial um the financial freedom that comes with being able to go, all right, I'm done, and know you're gonna be totally fine and not living off of an athlete salary, and
Yeah.
you know what are you going to do when you're 60 or whatever.
Totally.
I think that that is it's kind of the same reason for so long that I never even told people. I mean, most people thought I was just an athlete and I didn't have a real time job.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm ashamed that I didn't share more of that when I was doing it because I should have. I mean, that was part of who I was, and I kept those lives so separate. But yeah, don't quit your job. Keep doing what you're doing. And I mean, I think I can say that I get out more than I did for sure, and I love where I'm at right now. Like I mean, it's freaking awesome. But I can't imagine not knowing where I'm going to be financially, or like if I get hurt, or budgets are cut, or like yeah, or an
Totally.
injury happens, right? I mean, no, I don't know of any organization that, when something really dramatic happens to you, is just going to continue to pay you for the rest of your life. Like that's just
Yeah.
not going to happen.
Oh,
So,
100%.
um, yeah.
Yeah,
So
there's
that's
stability. Mhm.
yeah. Okay. So the other piece of this whole picture of yours is that you recently got married,
We did. I
and he this is too personal, and let me know, we can cut it, but
all
he
good.
also has two kids, right? Two
Yeah.
boys. Okay.
Boys.
See, I follow you. I know what's going on. Um, but I think this is just all more important that you're pursuing this. You have this career. You're married. You have now family that's there, and you're
Yeah.
balancing all these things together, which
Yeah.
is what 90% of the people listening to this are probably in the same exact shoes. So the fact that you just got back from Chamonix, what, a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, a week. I think a week.
Okay, a week ago, and then got home, and then also went to highlight how he obviously loves you a ton, and obviously clearly understands the value that these things are giving you. So kind of like, how do you balance those things? What's that look like?
That is so great. I haven't really, been able to publicly dive into something like this, but I think it's so important. My husband and I are very independent people, but also, very loyal people. And we dated for, 3 years before we got married. I had just the best little bachelorette pad. He had two amazing, but, you know, preteen stinky boys. And I was like, I'm not moving in until we get married. My life is good. Y'all are cool. See you in the morning. And knowing our personalities and how much we both loved adventure and travel and were independent, but just got along so well as friends. And, as, our relationship, deepened into, deep, deep love where it's like, oh, I think we want to do the rest of our life together. He was with me when, he saw me get the, contract with North Face. He, saw me get a Subaru commercial for climbing. Like he watched kind of the world open up, speaking opportunities. And, he and his own company and, um, you know, business and kind of the tech world, he understood the importance of traveling and giving your all for what you're passionate about. And so there was this element of just equal partnership, equal support of each other's passions. And going into a marriage, yeah, there's compromise where I'm like, oh man, it's been 4 weekends in a row and I've been gone and you've been gone. He travels a lot for work, to different countries. And the week I came back from Chamonix, I'm in customs entering SeaTac Airport. He had just hopped on a plane to go to Mexico and work for a week at a Mexico City. And so I'm, looking at my air tags on my, phone going, okay, where's my bag? And I see his air tag, this little emoji with, shades, out on the tarmac because that was him in his plane, heading out. And so, I'm like, texting you, I see ya on the, that's how we interact. Like, great, that's when we see each other, on our Find My Phone, app. But we just do really well with supporting each other when we're with each other and making the mundane moments really count. Cleaning the house or doing laundry or doing the garden or helping the boys get through this phase of life. And so those are our, behind the scenes, quiet, peaceful moments. And, we can sense when we've had too much time apart. And we're like, oh, I miss you. And then we get back to that point where it's like, okay, you're going here. He goes to India in a couple weeks, and I go to Alaska in a couple weeks, and so you just get so excited when you see your partner like thriving in their world, and when you can be a supporter of that, it just makes like the time we're together so much sweeter. And I had partnerships in the past where, either they're like, "Oh, I'm holding you back," or, "Oh, I really want to go with you on that," or, "You're always gone." And I'm like, "Well, my teaching schedule is different than your, every single day." And so there will be times, I'll get a couple more climbs in the season than you, just logistically with my career. And so I think what, made me feel confident about marriage and marriage to, a man with two teenage boys is really, his emotional intelligence, and how he, like held what I did in high esteem. And it's just equal partnership, and, loving to like serve each other, and, the arguments or the communication, that's part of life regardless of a marriage. And so, those are, just things we work on when we see each other. And
Yeah.
I love it. And it's been, when we started dating, he, hadn't kind of been exposed to the climbing world. And I remember I was like, well, I would love to teach it to you. Like, we have a lot of volcanoes out here. And within that first 2 years of dating, he had climbed all five volcanoes. I was able to bring him up every single one. The second one we did, or uh, this was the very first, Adams we climbed. And I knew that one, we'll go up the south face, no glaciers. I don't have to worry about, teaching him crevasse rescue just yet. And we get in the car to drive out there, and he looks at me. He's like, I know we're older, but you want to be my girlfriend, like official. And I was like, you want to, if I say yes, and this weekend doesn't go well with you high up on a mountain at elevation, can I take back my yes? Or is it a no takesies backsies kind of thing? And so he was bold, and he did great, just putting on his crampons with ease. And I was like, oh, okay, I think this can work. But yeah, so it's been great. We're 7 months in now of marriage, and I love it, having a partner that supports me, seeing the boys, watch their father learn climbing from a one-handed girl,
Yeah.
and they're like, much respect to that, and we've been climbing with them. And it's just cool that they also, what's normalized for them is, a female with a disability teaching these things, doing these things. And, hopefully, that, shifts their perspectives when they go out into the world, and they have a little bit more empathy or understanding. And
Yeah.
that's the same with, my classroom in kindergarten. Every year, they're learning what a prosthetic is, what ice climbing is, what the mountains are, what the outdoors is. I get to share that part of my heart with them. And I started every June doing a little, you know, kindergarten hot seat TED Talk time where, we day before watch videos of, an athlete doing something incredible, skiing or surfing or climbing. We'll come up with questions for them, and then we get to interview them, on Zoom the next day. And thanks to COVID, I got to become just an IT uh, of the classroom, and I how to quickly do Zoom and get us in there. And they love it. They're seeing people who are climbing, surfing, skiing that look like them, or someone who looks like me, and then they're getting to just talk about that world and see it. And
Yeah.
so you may be getting a text to join the kindergarten hot seat. You just have to be
Kindergarten
ready
TED
to,
Tech Talk. Like,
yeah, share your favorite color, maybe, your scariest moment on the mountain. And oh man, it's hilarious. But
oh,
it's
I
just so
bet.
fun to, mix my two worlds, and get the kids
Yeah.
thinking, provoke them for what they could be a part of in the future.
I think the middle graders maybe warmed me up for maybe that. They were just preparing me maybe for the kindergartners.
I think so. I
What
think so.
what I think is so cool, and I think this, and you nailed, it's the same thing for me and my wife, is like you are, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, but you're not his passion, and he is not your passion. Like, you make each other's lives better together. But I think where people really fail in relationships is when they become each other's passion, or one is their, one person is their passion and the other one it has something else they want to do, and then there's always this battle back and forth of trying to, well, this is what I want to do, and but I would really want to hang out with you, and like that to me is where I see, and then ultimately one person just stops doing their passion,
Yeah.
and that marriage just doesn't seem to be, or that person just isn't as happy as they used to be. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I was, it's so hard to tell people that, but like when you have it, it's like, oh yeah, like all of these things click, and then a relationship's actually quite easy. When when it's you're no longer that person's passion. Like we just make each other's lives better together.
Yeah.
Like I always tell my daughter, I'm like, you don't ever want to need a man in your life. Whoever the man is in your life can make your life better, but you don't need him. Never put yourself in a situation where you need a man in your life. Like you just want them to make your life a little bit better.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
and I
and,
hope that she'll follow through with
I
that.
think that's kind of, the fathering that I had, and I had a, really healthy, strong relationship, with my dad. And I see so much of my dad in my husband and their generosity, the way they love people well, and the way they make people laugh, and people want to be around them. And so I was really picky. Like, I have all good things to say about, all the people I previously dated in my life, but I knew like I can't enter into that, realm of marriage, or a long-term relationship, without some key factors. And you just watch. I just was like, I will just wait and watch, and how, supportive, and how compromising, and like how can we work on it. And communication's the biggest thing. And and it just makes me so, so grateful that, I do have a husband that's like, I am so proud of you. And when I feel imposter syndrome, or when I feel, like, oh my gosh, I can't do it, he just reminds me like what I love, the work I put in. Like he reminds me of, you know, grit when I need grit. And it's fun. Like I'm so thankful to be in a relationship, and I'm not doing this by myself. Even though I was really good at doing it by myself and I loved that world. And I'm like, I would have stayed single. Like it just, what a time to be alive, where like me as a female, like I don't have to be married for security. That was a
Yeah.
first in my family. Generationally, I look back, I'm like, wow, that's incredible to be at a place like it. You feel blessed and lucky, and privilege mixed in all in the same. But then you're just like, it's great now to then, you know, make vows with someone, and see that I can still pursue who I am, and I can still walk in that. I don't have to shrink, or I don't have to completely give up. Like the
Yeah.
compromise still fully contains who we are as two people. So it's fun.
Yeah. I mean, I wondered from afar just because I mean, I feel like 80-90% of the people I see that get married, then climbing kind of comes this thing that dwindles into the background. And I wondered with you, because you were so passionate about it and you get married, was it going to have the same effect? Um, you could kind of tell in the beginning, I mean, just watching your life from afar, um, that he seems super supportive. And seems like he's also got a pretty good sense of humor as well, from what I can gather.
Oh
He's
yeah.
also a really good looking dude, so good on you for holding
Yeah.
out. Like,
Thank
I
you.
mean, you live in a. I mean, I don't know. You're not right in Seattle, right? You're kind of on the outskirts
Tacoma.
somewhere.
So little,
Tacoma, yeah,
35, 40 minutes
Tacoma.
south.
So
Yeah.
you had a lot of choices of men. So good on you for waiting. Um, did
Thank you.
did the kindergartner did teach being a teacher make you not really want to have kids? Like, because you're surrounded by kids all the time? I'm
Ooh,
curious.
yeah, good question. It definitely made me more patient for kids. When you're young, I always thought like, oh, kids, I want boys. But I honestly desired so much to be a grandma and just skip the mom step. And for the longest, I was like, how can I become a grandma? I want to be a grandma. I don't really want to be a mom. And I do think that is a lot of, being a kindergarten teacher. They're coming in as 5, they're leaving as 6. the skills that you do get to mommy throughout the day, having to get them to, calm down from an overwhelmed feeling of someone took my toy, or, my
Yeah.
feelings hurt, or this is hard. And so I do get to parent per se, and really partner with their parents for that whole year. And it is very tiring, much like I think it would be as a parent. And so I yeah, didn't have a strong desire to create what I was working with 6 hours a day, on a 1 versus 15 sort of scale.
Yeah.
One of me and way too many of them. And so, yeah, it definitely held me back. And
Yeah.
the years kept creeping on, and I was like, okay, I'm 34, I'm 35, I'm 36. I don't know if I want to tap into the, geriatric pregnancy. I'm amazed at so many women that do it and they're rocking it. And then find him, and our first date, he was like, I have 2 boys and I think I'm done. And I was like, I don't think I want any at all. And I never thought I would be a stepmom or a mom,
Yeah.
but here I am, and I love these boys. And 2 boys, I've always grew up with boys in my neighborhood. I was the only girl, had a lot of girl friendships, but it just fits so well. And it's been really fun to be that bonus mom and support
Yeah.
their mom and their dad. And, um, you know, they're like, "Oh, I really want candy, I want ice cream," and now they can drive, and, they're like, "Deuces." But, it was fun to just, pop in the car and go to the store and like, "Alright," like, "Here's a pint of ice cream. Let's eat it all before your dad gets home." Like, just kinda learning, like, what it is to parent and what it is to, hold, a high hopes for them, but then they're
Yeah.
not really, your own, but your heart grows in love. And so it's been
Oh yeah.
such a learning curve, like, and now to balance all of that, it's been fun. I'm so grateful.
That's super cool. I mean, I think you're much like my wife, and you guys have got to chat about this at some point. But like, because she's in juvenile justice, and she just like I can't like, yeah, doing that all of her life. She's like, I don't want kids. Like I see all of this bad stuff, and like I can't do it. And so when she came into my daughter's life, she would have been, God, she must have been like 14, 15. I can't remember. But
Oh,
anyways, you know, she she didn't want to be a mom, and I was like, she doesn't need a mom. Like she's
mm,
got a mom. What she needs is somebody to look up to, a role model.
yeah,
And she was a perfect fit for that, to kind of see, what you can do with your career and all these other things. And so I'm sure you're fitting. They don't, you're probably filling that exact same role. You're just showing them what a strong female can do,
yeah,
whether it's career and sports, and also, yeah, I've got, one hand that works and the other one I'm making work.
yeah,
And, you can do whatever you want to go do, which I think is super powerful for kids these days to see, no matter who they are, what age they are,
yeah.
etc. That's really
Oh,
cool.
100%.
Yeah.
I met them at, 12, 13, and now they're 18 and 16. And, and I do hope that. I hope that, they see me, and again, it normalizes. Just like I want my kindergartners, they see my hand and I get all the reactions. The like, "Whoa, it looks like a kitty. Draw a face on it," to the like, "Oh, that's weird." And, those moments are usually the parents are there and they're like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my kid." Oh, but I'm like, I'm a brick wall. Like, I have heard it all. You cannot offend me. Trust me.
Uh,
But I love that, hey, I get to absorb that first reaction regardless of if it's positive or negative, because give me a month with these kids, they will totally be over this. This is not going to be special. They will be normalized to it,
yep.
and they will find like, "Oh, she's fun, she's cool, she teaches me, she loves me." And my hope is the next kid they see, maybe with some type of disability, they already have that schema, that background knowledge. It's normalized for them, and so, you know, they're not awkward or rude intentionally or unintentionally. It's just normal. Hey, hey, you're cool and one of
Yeah.
us. Like, I hid my hand mostly in junior high, high school, like, because I just didn't see anyone like me, and I just was so nervous. Like,
Yeah.
someone's gonna judge me or think I'm weird, or boys aren't gonna like me. And turns out that was all in my head. Plenty of boys have liked me. But it's just like starting it young or getting to be the stepmom that shows that. Like, I just hope that just switches the mindset. That's kind of
Yeah.
the legacy you want to leave, as a teacher, as a climber, as a parent, you just want to leave a positive perspective in that next generation. So it's kind of fun that, I get to do that maybe in multiple realms in this life.
Yeah, and when they're at an age where you know, they're able to I think they're able to, um, mold a little bit better than probably when they're 15, 16, or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
my dad, worked for a company that did, for Quickie wheelchairs, and they're, like, kinda high-end wheelchairs for people that were doing sports and things like that. They did the normal stuff too. So I grew up around people in wheelchairs, and realized like, yeah, they could pretty much do anything. Like I'd be going skiing with them all every week, every other weekend or whatever. I'm like, holy
Yeah.
crap, like these are badass skiers.
Yeah.
So it totally does. I never thought about that perspective, but it totally does kind of like normalize this, disability or whatever it might be for somebody when they're young like that. That you just think that's just what it is. It's just
Yeah.
normal, and
Yeah.
yeah, they can do what I do too. So that's
Totally.
super cool. That's
Right.
super cool.
Yeah.
Um, lost my train. I was something I was. Oh, are you mentioned it there? Are you pretty hard on yourself?
I have this perspective in life. Like, I love accomplishing goals. I love hard work. I love, like, I don't wanna say perfectionism, because I know, man, there's so much baggage behind that I'm sure therapists would be like, "Let's, break that down." But I just am, I love hard work and I love routine and accomplishing goals. And so it's, up 5 a.m., gym, teaching, like doing, from my master's to my, national boards and, climate, all these goals. Like, I just really like succeeding. And when failure happens, it is very hard because I don't want to look like maybe um a failure, or like I'm not good enough, because I always have felt like, well, I have one hand, so I have to be really good at my makeup or really good at my hair, when I was younger and worried about, what boys thought. And I'm grown past a lot of those things now, but I definitely find myself hard on myself. And for example, last year in the Alaska Range, climbing with a team on the moose's tooth, my prosthetic release button froze, pushed in, and we couldn't get it unfrozen, and ended up climbing 4 pitches of ham and eggs with one tool. Don't recommend it. It is possible, but I don't recommend it. And ended up, chipping kind of like a bone spur or piece of cartilage, and it was such incredible pain. And we're at this anchor, and I'm with Andres Marin and Anna Pfaff and Thomas Bukowski and Austin Schmidt, and he has a camera and he's filming it. We're kind of on this expedition mentorship thing, as our last big push for the athlete development program, and I'm the reason why we're stopping, and we have to make a decision on who goes forward and who comes down, because now I'm so injured. Not only did my prosthetic fail, or have a malfunction that was unexpected, but now I'm hurt. And I remember just weeping, and I'm not a crier at all, and I'm crying in front of people I revere so much and look up to and had become, really good friends with. And I had said, like, I hate being disabled. I'm just like tears pouring down. And Austin's like zooming in, and I'm like, oh no, this may go public one day. And, I just am so hard on myself in those moments because I want to be seen as an equal, and I think that's where it lies. I want to be seen as good enough. And again, I'm like, oh, there's so much to unpack there and work through. Um, but really I think that's why it's so healthy to be, in your climbing community, whatever community it is, that people are speaking truth in life into you in those hard moments. Because, Andreas, he grabbed me, he's like, it's okay, like, it's okay. Anna cries all the time. Uh And she's like, I do, thank you, yes,
Yeah,
but just raising, like, okay, even the pros have hard times, like, emotions are normal or failure is normal, and Austin's like, "Dude, you're a forerunner, like, no prosthetic disabled adaptive climber has been up this route ever, like, as the Alaska range is, still new when it comes to prosthetics, like, how do they do in the really, really cold temps?" And he's like, "So, see what you're doing, like, you're opening a door, and it's gonna help you, further yourself the next time you come back, but other people too." And so I'm realizing, like, when I'm hard on myself, when I feel like I fail, it can be unto something based on my perception, and how
yeah,
am I, how am I deciding to choose? And I live with this, life statement, like, can't, will, did. Like, I can't ice climb, and then seeing that picture of Mo and that little piece of representation. Oh, no, no, no. I will ice climb. And then it being created, and I went out and, climbed, like, oh, I did. So can't,
yeah,
will, did. And then realizing that's cyclical. That's not just like period, end of story. You have already always have done the did. You sometimes go back to can't. And on that day in April last year, I went back to can't. And
yeah,
so, to, kind of wrap that up in a nice little bow, at the end of this month, I pack my bags and I go back to the Moose's Tooth for redemption. Tool we have in a neoprene case that's going over that section. My shoulder's completely healed and stronger than I was last year. I have a partner, and she and I are just going to crush it and hopefully reach the summit. But I'm realizing, like, even if I'm hard on myself, like, if I don't quit, I win. I
yeah,
don't give up on myself. I have that grit, and have that grace. I think grit and grace do this little dance, and so
yeah.
I'm kind of learning that right now.
It's interest I mean, you're clearly hard on yourself, I can tell you that from afar.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you blamed your like, it was a gear failure with your prosthetic, which gear failures happen all the time, but you instantly went
Mm,
after yourself.
yeah.
I mean, yes, the shoulder was an after effect from the gear failure because you were probably going on one arm for, whatever.
Yeah, just
Um,
ow,
yeah, that was a gear failure, Kimber. So just remind you of that one.
thank
Has
you.
nothing to do with you.
Thank
Um, but it's yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm hard on myself too, and it's a tough balance sometimes, and it's
yeah,
why you're as good as you are. It's why you've accomplished what you've accomplished because you are hard on yourself, and finding the balance between those things is incredibly difficult. And if anybody figures out the secret recipe to that, let me know. But
let me know too.
um, it's a freaking roller coaster, no
Yeah,
doubt about that.
yeah,
So that was a perfect lead in. So going back to the Moose's Tooth, gonna go for the full send
full
and
song.
kind of rework the prosthetic to make sure it didn't freeze up. It's interesting that it happened there. I guess
Yeah,
probably all the snow, but I mean, you've been just a random. Here's the thing I would look at. That probably maybe happened for a reason. And the reason there was something else. You just got to listen to those
totally.
signs sometimes. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I agree. But like you saying, that's a gear failure. Gear failures happen regardless of who you are climbing. Like, that's why I think community is so important when you are hard on yourself, because you get the truth spoken to you. Like, I
yeah,
don't want to do this by myself. I can't prop myself up.
yeah,
I need people around me. I need good people around me. So thanks
yeah,
for that. And yeah,
yeah. I mean, the social media, half the people might help prop you up. The other half will take you down. But
yeah, it'd be fine. There's been one or two, that are kooky, and I just,
they'll- I
let them
bet.
go away. But yeah,
Yeah, it's feast or famine when it comes to that one. So,
hmm, totally.
so you're taking off here in a few weeks. And then you don't do you rock climb much? You just do a little bit. I mean, winter's kind of that's your jam.
Yeah, winter's really my jam. I kind of figured out, like, what do I truly love to do? What do I want to invest, my
Yeah,
time and money into? Like, it's for ice. And so rock season, I'm really back in Washington, and looking ahead, wanting to kind of explore Squamish area up in Canada, Index out here. And, I love, anything, from 5'9" trad out in Washington on granite. It's just awesome. And just doing that on the regular, it's um, sometimes feels like a short season. It can be so rainy out here at times. But maybe, in the future, I start traveling, find some desert rock, crack, like things like that. There's always so much anyone can continue to push in their, field of climbing with
Yeah.
grades. But
Well, it
yeah,
seems like you like to do a lot of other things too. Like I know you're biking and
yeah,
you're doing fishing, hunting, whatever. Like you like to do, which I think is really great to have the balance in your life. It can't just be climbing, climbing, climbing.
yeah,
Um,
totally.
and from a
And
even just from a safety perspective, it's always good to be kind of mixing up your sports and for your
yeah,
body too. It's good to mix it up. So, and your
yeah.
probably husband or probably appreciates when summertime comes. He probably sees a little bit more of you.
A little bit, yeah. He'll make the time to come on, some trips. And Glacier Peak was his last volcano, so last summer he went on the long journey with me and a group of climbing buddies. And so I'll see where I can get him this year. Ultimately my goal is getting him on ice. He's a little like, oh, I want to get good at trad, on rock where that it's warm. And I'm wearing maybe a t-shirt at times, but I think maybe next year I'll get him out to, perhaps he'll come to Cody with me and we'll
Yeah,
get
give him a coat. I mean, shoot, this weekend it was 55 degrees and we were ice climbing. It was, I mean,
same.
I could
Yeah,
have taken a nap on Mean Green in the sun
yeah.
after, it was
I
freaking
got a
ridiculous.
sunburn after climbing dribbles out on in the canyon. Oh,
Oh,
just
yeah.
yeah. We were
I
like,
bet things were, what was that?
you're just like touching your face. My lips, I had this, chapstick that I was like, oh, I got this from France. I just came back. There's olive oil in it. Dude, I just essentially cooked my lips in the canyon for 2 days, thinking like I was doing something nice. I woke up the
Oh
next
my
day and I was like,
gosh.
did do I have filler? Like, oh my gosh, my lips are just so yeah. So we had some
Yeah.
fun climbing.
Some
And
sun
then
oil on the lips never,
yeah, I'm like,
not
oh
really
okay.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, because I forget like it's at elevation, like out
Yeah.
there, I
And
think
if you're not in the sun, it's reflecting. It's,
yeah, for
yeah.
sure, and I'm one of those, sea life dwellers normally, so I just forget like, oh yeah. But
That's awesome. Well, we are over an hour, which I was like, oh, it'll probably be like 45 minutes to an hour. But awesome, awesome, awesome conversation, Kimber. I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of tell your story to everybody here. And we're psyched to see you get up to Moose's Tooth as well. You want to kind of give everybody like your social media handle? You're mostly Instagram, I think.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm an elder millennial, so the TikTok I can't quite stick with. The boys they try to help me, and they're just like, "Oh, get out of here." Yeah. So thanks, Mulkey, for having me. This was so fun. You can find me at Kimber Bell, Belle. That is my middle name. Kimber Bell on Instagram. Come say hi and watch what I do, or go or come enjoy the kindergarten quotes.
Yeah.
There are plenty.
Yeah, if you don't need to follow another climber, just follow her for the good humor kindergarten quote of the day. I mean, those are well worth it. There's no
Yeah,
doubt. I send those to so many people. I'm like, oh, this one's good. Yeah,
nice.
and my daughter too. So
I
yeah,
love
they're
it.
good stuff.
Mhm.
Well, thank you, Kimber, for your time. Really appreciate it. Yeah, thanks.